Hey everybody, so I am far from a prominent YouTuber. I don't consider YouTube as really part of my identity at all. I do videos here and there, but it's really just an extension of my general online activity. It's not the route that I came to be an online commentator or whatever through. But nonetheless, I have been following for the past couple years the way that YouTube has modified its content regulation guidelines, the way it has changed its monetization protocols, and things of that nature. When I was at the Young Turks, since it's a predominantly YouTube-based outlet, that was something that we had to keep abreast of. And now that I have my own little channel here, I mean, it doesn't really have that much of an impact on me, but it's still something that I'm interested in just from a social and political standpoint. And today was just a really dire day in terms of YouTube's total inability to resist pressure imposed on it by these screaming hordes of moralizing media people who want their own preferences and whims to be reflected in the policy of the company. Now, there was this controversy for the past couple of days about this guy. I guess he's a journalist of some kind, Carlos Maza, who does videos and other stuff for Vox, saying that, "Oh my God, YouTube, please help me. There's somebody on there being mean to me." This guy is an adult journalist who voluntarily, on his own accord, decided to engage in a profession that entails making provocative political statements online and feigns shock and indignation when other people online make fun of him for it. Really? Let me just double check to be 100% sure that I have this guy's name right, because I don't want to get into any trouble at all. And even if I mispronounced it, because this guy is such a non-entity that I really am not even that familiar with him. I've seen him here and there, but he just does not impinge on my radar at all, except when he's whining like a baby. Yeah, it's Carlos Maza of Vox. And he was whining that Steven Crowder had said mean stuff about him. Okay, number one, I find Steven Crowder totally obnoxious. I don't think he's intelligent. I think politically he's a disgrace. I think he's not funny. I think he's just a noxious presence on the internet, and I have no time for him. However, making fun of people on the internet is it started on the first day that the internet became a mass medium. Okay? I get made fun of all day, every single day. And I'm not even exaggerating. Okay? And it would never occur to me to say, "Oh, you are making fun of me in ways that I deem harassing. Therefore, I'm going to demand that whatever platform you're on, expel you from that platform so you can no longer partake in what is essentially now today the public sphere." Because that's just, whether you like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, that functionally is what YouTube, Twitter, etc. are. But Carlos Maza has to make this big stink about how Steven Crowder, YouTube has to do something. They got to step in and protect me from this harassment. Carlos Maza, I scanned some of his output recently. He's constantly declaring people white supremacists. Okay? He's constantly, demonizing people in the most provocative terms possible. And you can agree or disagree with whether his characterizations are right in terms of whether various people are white supremacists, but the idea that that's not provocative and is then going to provoke a backlash is beyond ridiculous. Ridiculous doesn't even begin to capture how idiotic it is. Now, they're claiming that they're targeting him because he's gay. Okay, well, his Twitter handle is gaywonk, Gaywonk. That's what he chose. He produces journalism that constantly self-refers as about him being gay. Being gay is something that he talks about all the time. So it's just of course people are going to make fun of that. Like, other gays make fun of that. It's not like this gigantic scandal that you can't brush off if you're a public figure. Anyway. I mean, sure, if you want, criticize back the guy who's going after you, Crowder, who, again, I don't like. But leave it at that. I mean, it's just insane that he would twist it into this victimhood narrative where he's being harassed. Again, I've been, quote, harassed, not because of my, sexual traits or whatever. So I understand if there's a different dimension there. But, I just got done with a major controversy over the past couple of days where there was obviously like a targeted harassment campaign against me waged by various people in the media and elsewhere. And I'm not going to go to Twitter and say, you have to expel these people who are harassing me because I can't handle it. That's just a childlike mentality. And further, you are imbuing the tech authorities with power to dictate and monitor and censor speech, thereby granting them these vast unchecked powers that they don't deserve. I mean, the reason why people are now more and more considering whether these entities should be public utilities, whether they should be subject to more stringent governmental regulation, is because then at least the First Amendment would be a standard by which all of these entities would have to abide legally. You'd think they would abide voluntarily by free speech as a principle, but they're not doing so. They're expelling people on the grounds that they want to appease the moralizing journalists and media people and others who rallied in defense of Carlos Maza and against Crowder. And sure enough, after, the outrage cycle subsided, after it ran its course, YouTube just came out this afternoon with a blog post of some kind or a statement saying that they are going to more aggressively implement policies to, let me just get the exact phrasing because it's so, Orwellian is an overused phrase, but it really is classically Orwellian. So YouTube says it's going to more aggressively, quote, tackle hate, whatever the F that means. And that's going to entail, quote, partnering closely with lawmakers and, quote, raising up authoritative voices. Wow. Awesome. I'm so happy that YouTube, whoever the content monitors who happen to work for Google and its YouTube division are the ones making these unilateral decisions about what content is acceptable on the internet. You're not going to have a competitor to YouTube. That's not the way it works. It's a monopoly, effectively. Yeah, you have other video sites, but they're never going to even remotely approach the scale of YouTube, at least in the remotely foreseeable future. It's almost like saying in the 1800s, oh, if you don't like Standard Oil so much, start your own oil company. No, that's not how it works. It's virtually impossible when a firm accrues that level of monopolistic power to meaningfully compete with them. And the same goes for Facebook and Twitter and, whatever else. So we who use those platforms have a stake in those platforms comporting themselves in a way that is rational and aligns in some sense with the principle of free speech. And I know that there are some people on the right who use free speech as a bludgeon to get away with all kinds of crap. All right? And they pretend to be sterling proponents of free speech, where on the other hand, they'll turn around and want to get a Palestinian student group expelled, or they'll support, legislation that criminalizes criticism of Israel. So I don't absolve the right on this at all. Many of them are 100% hypocritical and not trustworthy. But the moralizing journalists are, by and large, not on the right. They are cultural liberals, and they are culturally in sync with the tech companies. So the tech companies want to see to it that the preferences of the journalists are enacted in the form of policy. Because these companies are hypersensitive to media criticism, especially from the elite media. Remember when Alex Jones was expelled from all the platforms virtually last summer? That was because the New York Times, CNN, etc. basically launched a crusade to pressure the companies into getting rid of him, thereby entrenching a precedent where the companies are accruing the power to make subjective determinations about who's permitted to create political speech on their platforms. Not having anything to do with inciting violence, that's a different standard. That's not protected by the First Amendment generally. I'm talking about just particular styles of political speech that most people in the media don't like. Therefore, they want that expunged from the internet. But YouTube is just capitulating now. I don't rely on YouTube for monetization. Not that I would have a huge monetization potential anyway, but that's just not why I use the medium. I wouldn't rule that out 100% if it became big enough and could actually be a viable income source. But at least, for now, it's not what I do. So I don't have a personal stake in that. But I saw today that they also, after this pressure was imposed on them, they demonetized Crowder. And it's just like, I'll state it again. I find the guy totally obnoxious, not funny, annoying, never watches stuff except when I see a clip here and there. And then, after about 45 seconds, I can't take it anymore. But you're going to demonetize his entire channel, which I presume is what his livelihood is based on, because this whining adult, not a child, an adult professional journalist who gets paid to make provocative political statements online. You're going to say, oh, you poor little boy, we'll help you out and we'll get rid of this mean guy who's been taunting you on the playground like we're in middle school. It's just pathetic, and it does get me a little riled up. Harassment is a malleable concept, okay? This guy was claiming he's being harassed for being gay. Okay, maybe so. Maybe he's being mocked on the grounds of being gay. Get over it. I'm sorry. I get mocked for my inborn traits constantly. I know other people who are gay on the internet get mocked for their sexuality. Yeah, you just move on. It's not worth getting so riled up about it to the point where you're whining and tattletaling to the Twitter or YouTube or Google or whoever authorities. It's infantilizing. I don't know. I just think we're on a bad course here, and there's probably going to have to be some kind of governmental intervention at some point, or else it's going to get even more censorious. You know what these people remind me of? Howard Stern in the 90s and early 2000s famously was always at war with the FCC because he was vulgar, he was offensive, he harassed people, meaning he would go after various, not just celebrities, although he did that viciously, but he would go after regular people who were callers or whatever, and he would rip into them, he would mock them relentlessly, and people wanted him punished because he was harassing them or he was offending them in some manner. So there were these pressure campaigns waged by conservative Christian groups, not exclusively, but they were generally the most prominent, demanding that the FCC censor Howard Stern because he was on public airwaves at the time, terrestrial radio. And, sure enough, the FCC did repeatedly fine Howard Stern, sometimes with huge, $1 million plus fines, because he was engaging in vulgar speech. And, Howard Stern famously then campaigned against George W. Bush in 2004 because he thought that his days in radio were numbered because George W. Bush's FCC was going after him. But then Howard Stern gave up and went to satellite radio, and actually his show became far less interesting because it was always interesting when he was at war with the FCC or he had to fight with his radio bosses or whatever because they were concerned about getting fined. That actually made it a very compelling dynamic. But anyway, the conservative Christian groups who were saying Howard Stern needs to be expelled from the airwaves, they sound exactly like these moralizing, preening, entitled journalism people and like tangential media people who are constantly saying that my preferences need to be imposed on everyone else and the tech companies must capitulate to me or else I'm going to create a stink. It's the same censorious impulse. Yeah, the political dynamics are somewhat inverted, but fundamentally, thematically, it's the same type of thing where you're saying, I'm offended, this is vulgar, this is harassing, therefore, expel them from the platform. Expel them from YouTube rather than the radio airwaves. It's the same impulse. I'm sorry. And I find it pathetic. Anyway, that does it for now, I guess. I'll stop before I get overly heated. But yeah, I'll talk to you later.